Namaste, kia ora, and good day, friends. Friends, we have with us today one of the most popular politician and the leader in New Zealand. He's very popular within the Indian community. His name is Michael Wood, the Honourable Minister for Transport, Workplace Relations and Safety, and also the Deputy Leader of the House. Welcome to the Indian News, Michael, and how are you today?
Oh, well, thank you, Yugal. Namaste and kia ora. I'm very good today. Back from Parliament this week. We've finished our sitting year. I'm looking forward to a nice summer break with my family. So we've got challenges ahead as we head into 2022, but I'm feeling good now and very happy to be here at the Indian News after a little break.
Sure. No, that's great. Thank you for that. I would want to inform you, Michael, before we start asking questions to you, since we know you are looking after two portfolios, but our question we have incorporated are the question which may be related to the government. So whatever information you have about other questions, you are free to answer, but we'll ask you those questions.
Look, of course, that's fine. I'm always happy to answer any questions about the work that we have ahead of us.
Thank you. Thank you, Michael, for that. We start with your views about the situation in the country, pre and post lockdowns. In fact, we have not even come out of the lockdowns completely. We are still in the traffic light system. And there's yet another variant knocking our doors in New Zealand. What's your opinion about that?
My main opinion and my main feeling at the moment is one of great pride in New Zealand and New Zealanders, and particularly in Aucklanders. Yesterday we hit the 90% double vaccination target, and at the beginning of this year everyone wrote that off. They said it couldn't be done. But New Zealanders rolled up their sleeves, they cared enough about each other to get in there and get vaccinated to keep each other safe. And we end the year with a very low number of cases, a low number of hospitalisations, a low number of deaths, the lowest levels in the developed world. Yeah. And with the new traffic light system, most things that we care about can happen. So while we still have challenges, and Omicron's sitting there, and we have more that we have to find out about it, I think that we're well placed, and that's thanks to people's hard work this year. So it's been tough, but I think we can feel proud and have some confidence.
Yeah, my next question is just related to that. So how do you rate your government's performance in dealing with the pandemic and subsequently dealing with the bettered economy of the country during this period?
I think the facts speak for themselves here. As I say, we have the lowest rate of deaths, the lowest rate of hospitalisations in the whole developed world, and we're getting the current outbreak under control. Very few other countries can do that. At the same time, we've got one of the strongest economies in the world, the lowest unemployment rate that we've had for 14 years, only 3.4%. So it has been very tough, and make no mistake, there have been people who have really found it difficult, and there have been sacrifices along the way. But I think collectively we've done well, and I think the core strategy of the government to look after people's health has been a very successful one, and it sets us up to be in the best possible position for next year. But there are always things we can improve, there are always things that we can learn from, and the thing about Delta and COVID is it's very tricky, and we constantly have to adjust our positioning and our settings to make sure that we get it right.
Great. Now, Michael, the borders need to be open at some point of time. So why do you think this government is hesitant to take the leap?
Well, look, we do know that we want to move towards a greater state of normality with our borders open. But I think we've made the right approach here. And what our government has said is that we're going to do that, we're going to move in that direction, but it's going to be careful and it's going to be staged and based on health advice. And what we've seen with some other countries is that when they've charged into doing these things very quickly, sometimes they've ended up with much greater rates of COVID in their population, and then they've had to pull back. We think it's much better to go careful, staged, one step at a time, see how it goes, and then move on to the next level. So we will start that opening up from this January, and in 3 stages between January and April, our intention is to move towards that reconnection with the world. And because we've got the traffic light system in place now, it means that we've got the system that can deal with it, so that if we do have outbreaks of COVID, we've got the tools to deal with it without having to use lockdown so much. So I think we've got the approach about right, but we'll keep reviewing the settings to make sure that we get the policy right.
Okay. Now, I'm sure you're aware, the grounded Kiwis hope the MIQ petition succeed, since over 23,000 people have signed it, and National and ACT Party are supporting it. So why the stranded Kiwis are left in dark?
Well, look, what I would say about this is that one of the things about COVID is that our responsibility as government is to make what we think are the right decisions to keep people safe and to look after people's well-being, not always to make the easy or popular decisions. And oh boy, I know that MIQ is tough. I'm a constituency MP in Mount Roskill. So I have a lot of constituents who have found this really tough. We've had people, husband, wives, families who have been separated for long periods of time. I've got friends and family who have found that difficult as well. But I have to say this, and I have to say it very honestly and clearly. MIQ has helped to keep Kiwis safe. It's been one of our key barriers, our tight management of our borders, that has stopped COVID seeding in New Zealand and having rampant infection and sickness. And what I have to say about the National and ACT Party position is that when you're in opposition, it's very easy to say the thing that'll be popular to the people that you're talking to, and not have to think about the consequences. We're in government and we do. Having said that, we have started the process of easing down MIQ, a shorter period in MIQ for most people, and as we move into next year, we'll continue to review those settings. And in time, we want to move to a position where we don't need it. But remember, Omicron's come up this week, and that's a reminder that we do need tight border management to keep our people safe.
Your answer actually leads me to my next question. This is like, you think the government should have had more humane approach, as thousands of families have been separated for almost 2 years. So why the government is still not sure on announcing the date and opening the borders?
Well, I would say that we've had a very human approach at the heart of our strategy. Our strategy has been focused on the health and well-being of New Zealanders. And as I say, there are no costless choices that we can make in COVID. Some months ago, we could have said, okay, we're getting rid of MIQ, open the borders up. And I will guarantee you 100% if we had have done that, we would have had more people getting sick and dying in New Zealand of COVID. Now, would that be a more compassionate approach? I don't actually think it would be. So there are difficult choices that we have to make here, and the tight border management is part of it. Within that, as we've gone along, we've tried to make decisions to help people as much as we can. For example, the very significant decision we made a couple of months ago about pathway to residency for over 160,000 migrant workers in New Zealand. So we're always trying to look at opportunities to help people in what is a very, very difficult situation.
So your answer actually hints me that you support the MIQ system. But what purpose do you think it serves when the Director General of Health, Dr. Bloomfield, yesterday only has said, respective of MIQ, Omicron or any other new variant, is inevitable to reach New Zealand. So what purpose do you think the MIQ is serving then?
Well, I can give a very good example of that because today we have detected an Omicron case in MIQ in Christchurch. Now, it's much better that we detected an MIQ when the person is isolated and we can stop that infection spreading from others than to have that person coming straight into in the community potentially. So that's a very good example of the additional border protection we get from MIQ. As I say, we won't have it forever. We want to move to a point where we don't need it, but at the moment it continues to provide an important protection that does help to keep New Zealanders safe.
Sure. Now, one of the New Zealand's top economic commentators, Bernard Hickey, says that during the pandemic period, the poor have gone to become poorer and the rich have gone richer. In fact, to the tune of $1 trillion. What's your take on it?
Look, I don't agree with everything that Bernard Hickey says in all of his analysis. We do have a problem with inequality in New Zealand that has been building up for 30 or 40 years, and many of the things that our government is doing are about trying to deal with that. That's why we're doing things like making sure there's a decent minimum wage in place. It's why we've increased core benefits and working for families. It's why we're moving ahead with fair pay agreements. It's why we're providing free school lunches to our poorest children. So we have a huge number of policies in place there. The main reason behind that wealth increase for the wealthiest New Zealanders that Mr Hickey talks about is the asset price inflation of New Zealand houses. And again, that's been a problem that's been building up for a very, very long time. One that we're very focused on bringing to a better situation through a mix of policies. But in truth, that's going to be something that will take some time. There's not any silver bullet to it. But I'm very proud during COVID of the things we've done to support people on low and middle incomes, things like the wage subsidy scheme that have kept people in work and kept people's living standards at a decent level.
Oh, that's a good answer. Michael, I understand you are one of the top performing ministers of the Jacinda government. But still some of the, pet projects which have been, hanging around for almost 4 or 5 years, for example, your light rail project, Auckland light rail project, they have not seen the light of the day. What's the reason?
Well, light rail is one of those projects that we weren't able to advance in the previous term And that's because we had three parties in government and they didn't agree, and that was pretty transparent. So you can't do much in that situation. So we've been in office now for about 1 year, and we've made really significant progress with light rail. We've established a unit to take the project forward. Cabinet has now made its decisions on what we're going to do, and we're going to fully announce the plan in the new year. Ultimately in Auckland, we continue to grow. We have terrible traffic congestion, we have urban sprawl. We will only fix that if we properly invest in high-quality modern public transport. That's why that project's important, and we will be moving forward with it very decisively in the new year.
So, how far do you think, if we want to tell our viewers, is from becoming the reality actually?
Well, look, as I say, we'll have firm announcements to make in the new year.
Okay.
Once the project starts to get built, it's a big project. The estimate is it takes around about 6 to 8 years to build it. There are no easy answers to that. Big infrastructure projects do take some time, but really all that means is that the sooner we start, the sooner we can get the benefits for our city, and so that's why I'm very keen to move it forward. In the meantime, we're moving forward with many other important transport projects. Tomorrow morning I'll be opening up the first stage of the Eastern Busway between Pāmua and Pakuranga. We opened the new Puhinui rail interchange, which provides a public transport connection to the airport a couple of months ago. So we are getting on with a lot of projects, and Auckland Light Rail will be one of the very important ones we move forward with next year.
Sure. Now, it's a very interesting question, and it's actually not interesting. People actually keep complaining about it. Why the local transportation in New Zealand, the whole countrywide, is so costly? Like, it's not even fully spread. It's not in the areas which is required. The main target of most of the transport modes are like the buses or train is, how to reach the CBD, but it's not spread out in the whole area of the city like Auckland. Is there anything the government is considering or thinking about it?
Well, yes, there is, and the Light Rail project is a good example of that. Yeah. It's about servicing hundreds of thousands of people in Auckland who currently don't have good access to public transport. That's what the Eastern Busway is about. If you live out in Botany, a beautiful part of Auckland, but terrible public transport. So we're putting the investment in to make sure that more people can get access to the system. And the key point is that what we lack in Auckland is a linked up network across the whole region, and that's what you're saying. Yeah. Small corridors of people have currently got access to the system. Yeah. So our plan and our vision is to build that linked up system, and that's about light rail between the city centre and Mangere. It's about a new light rail connection to the North Shore, to the northwest. It's about the Eastern Busway, and it's about how they all connect to each other so that people can make journeys all around the city, not just to the city centre, but if you want to get to New Lynn, if you want to get to Botany, if you want to get to Takapuna, we want to make it easy for you to use public transport and efficient to do so. Yeah,
Auckland is very well spread out. It's not just the CBD focus. So how long you think your projects are going to take the reality, and people will be eased on the road or on the traffic, or even at the cost of the transportation, which is not really very reasonable according to most people?
Well, as I say, we are getting underway, and we're already opening up important projects that we started in the previous term of government. I mentioned the Eastern Busway and the Puhinui interchange. We started work on a new Northwestern Busway that will be open by the end of 2022. We are getting on with Auckland Light Rail. Mayor Phil Goff has now announced a major new package to improve public transport that we're looking to support as well. None of these things happen just at the click of your fingers, but we are now making the investments that will build a better and more linked up system for the whole city.
Is any effort being made to make it cost effective? I've asked you this earlier as well.
Yes, yes, that's right. We are making moves in that direction, and we are, I'd say a couple of things here. I'm a regular public transport user myself. If you've got a hop card, it is actually pretty cost effective. If you compare it to the cost of running your car and parking your car, very often a bus ride, if I go into the central city, I'll normally take the bus from Mount Roskill. It's definitely cheaper than driving in and parking somewhere in the central city. So sometimes people, if they give it a go, they'll find that out. But the second thing that we are doing is looking at ways particularly of supporting people on lower incomes. So what I've announced this year is that from July 2022, for people with community services cards on low incomes, we will be providing half-price public transport in Auckland. That'll be our first step. And if that goes well, I'm very keen to look at other ways that we can start to bring down the costs for people.
Sure. I'm sure you would be aware the closed borders have cost the tourism industry alone more than $60 billion. What price this government do you think is prepared to pay for its decisions?
Well, as I said before, when you deal with something like a global pandemic like COVID, remember COVID's killed over 5 million people around the world, there are no costless decisions, and we are painfully aware that when we make these decisions there are often costs, and that's what we have to very carefully weigh up. So certain sectors like tourism have been more exposed. At the same time as we've been making decisions to keep Kiwis safe, and remember we have saved lives by our approach here, we have been trying to make sure that we provide as much support as possible to people who are affected. So we've paid out over $14 billion in the wage subsidy. There's currently a $600 million package of targeted support to the tourism sector. So we've tried to provide the support as we go along to cushion the blow of COVID as much as possible. We've always said we can't save every single business. We've tried to be honest about that. But we've provided as much support as we can. And the evidence for that is in the relatively low rates of unemployment we have. We have succeeded as a country, and we have been resilient in having a pretty good economic performance, given that this is the biggest shock to the world economy since the Second World War.
Sure. Now, what's your message to the community on the occasion of Christmas and the Happy New Year coming soon, especially the Indian community in special mention?
Well, I'll just come back to the comment I made at the beginning. The first one is that I would say I'm very proud of the way that Kiwis have come together. It's been such a hard year. People have felt tired. They felt depressed at times. Some people have lost their jobs. Some people's businesses have been in a really difficult position. But people have come together and supported each other, got vaccinated, and that means that we're in the best position possible for 2022. So I'd ask people to feel proud of themselves and proud of the country that we live in. And I would say let's just continue working together and have some confidence as we head into 2022. I can't promise that it'll be easy, but I think we have a strong platform for moving forward together as a country, because that's how we've coped with the difficult situation of the last 2 years. And finally, I'd just say, over Christmas and New Year's, it has been tough. So please, if you're able to, do just take some time with your family and friends. Allow yourself some time off. Allow yourself the ability to relax, just to let the tension go and enjoy some time with the people that you love. That's certainly what I'll be doing over Christmas and New Year's.
On that note, we come to the end of our interview. Michael, on behalf of the Indian News team and the management, I wish you and your family and your team a Merry Christmas and a very Happy New Year.
And you too, Jurgen. Thank you.
Thanks for your time.
Pleasure.